Can anyone hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to give people a minute or two to jump into the GoToMeeting, so just give me a minute or two and we'll get started. Okay, so I'm going to get started. I'm just going to put probably everyone on mute, and if you have any questions, you can direct them in the GoToMeeting chat box, and I'll try to answer the questions as we go along or near the end of the presentation. So, thank you everyone for joining me today. So, this is going to be basically a repeat of the session you would have seen at user group if you were there. I'm going to be covering pretty much the same things. So if you've seen that presentation, you may not want to see this one, or you may want to see it as a refresher. So business intelligence. What is business intelligence? Business intelligence refers to technologies, applications, and practices for the collection, integration, analysis, and presentation of business information. The goal of BI is to allow for easy interpretation of big data. There are many BI tools as someone who may or may not use GP that you would want to use. So I'll be covering some of those tools today. Most of these are considered self-service BI tools, which means that you don't really have to have your IT team involved to get data out of the system. Tools I'll be reviewing are SRSS reports using Report Builder, SmartView, Excel reports and dashboards, Power BI Desktop, Power BI Cloud Service, and Power BI Mobile application. So let me start off by showing you Report Builder. So Report Builder is an application that usually comes with when you install SQL Server. In SQL 2016, it is a separate application. However, in previous versions of SQL, it is actually built into SQL. And if you're at the home page, you probably will see a button that says Report Builder. So, but I mean, in 2016, which is what I'm running, it's actually a separate application. So I'm going to start off by building something fairly simple. So I'm going to build an SRSS report. Before I do that, though, I'm just going to give you guys an example for anybody who hasn't seen SRSS reports before, what that is. So if I just go back to here, these are SRSS reports, and you're usually deployed with, there's some out-of-the-box reports or they're deployed with GP. So I'm just going to go into the two database here, and I'm just going to look at financial reports, and I'm going to bring up a checkbook register, for example. So there's a bunch out of the box reports. There's typically a lot of parameters. Most of them have to be filled in this particular case, this one just has random data. So I'm just going to click View Report, and you're going to notice that the report generates the screen here, which lists the current balance of my checkbooks that I have in the GP system. And some of the features are with this report is I can expand, click this little plus button here and expand the rows and see the details of each checkbook. As you can see here, I also have the ability from here, I can export reports. So if I click the export drop down, I can export to Excel, Word, PDF, CSV file. I've actually already exported a report just so you can see what that looks like. Just going to go back here. So here's the checkbook. Once again, it exports actually really nicely, and I have these subtotals so I can collapse and expand sections just as I could in the report. So it's actually pretty nice how it exports to Excel. So I'm going to start off by creating a very simple SRSS report that's going to give me GL accounts with debit credit balances and some details going to show the journal entry number. So start off a very simple report. I'm just going to select new report, blank report. And I'm going to add a data source. So the first thing you want to do is connect to the database where the data lives. So I'm going to go to data source, add new data source. And typically you're going to have, you can click browse here and actually see your data sources. So right now I'm connected to PBG demo serve, the report server. If I go to data sources, when you deploy out of the box GP reports, it typically creates the data sources for you. So in this case I have GP TWO, which is FiberChem data. I'm just going to hit OK, and I'm just going to connect to that data. I can click test connection, give it a name. I'll just call it GP TWO. You don't have to do this. And I'm going to hit test connection. It's going to successfully connect. I'm going to hit OK. So now I have a data source. The next thing I want to do is I want to say I need this particular piece of information from these tables or this view. So I need to actually create a data set at this point. So I'm going to go to data sets, right click, add data set. And I'm just going to give this, I'll leave this as data set 1, doesn't really matter. I want to switch this from using a shared data set to use a data set embedded in my report. And then here it's asking me for my data source that we created before, so GPTWO. And then the actual query. Now, you could type in some specific query syntax here, or you can just click Query Designer. And I'm just going to do something like, I'm going to select transactions from Account Transactions view. So if I go to Views, and I see Account Transactions right here, it's a view that's created by the system, so I can just click and expand this box. And I only want certain fields within that view, so I'm going to select Journal Entry, Series, Transaction Date, Account Number, Account Description, Debit, Credit, and Account Category. And what's the other one I'm going to select here? Open Year. So at this point I have the fields I sort of want in my report. I may or may not use all of these. I'm just going to hit OK at this point. And it's basically created the syntax for me at this point, so I don't really have to do too much. I'm just going to hit OK at this point. And now I have data being returned. Now, so the next thing I need to do in creating a report is to drag, create a table or some sort of object on my report that I'm going to show the end users. So I'm just going to insert a new table. I can do a table, matrix, report, images, sparkline, all sorts of things here, but I'll just keep it simple. We'll just insert a table. Now I can do something very simple, like just click on a row here and say I want to insert account number, account description. As you can see, this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to insert debit, insert another column to the right. So I'm going to insert credit amount. And that's pretty much it. Now, one of the things I want in my report is I want to see the net amount. So what I'm going to do is right-click on my data set and add a calculated field. And I'm just going to call this net. And then I'm going to do, look at the fields in my report. So I'm going to do debit amount, and I'm just double-clicking minus credit amount. Hit OK. So now I have a new field called net. and I'm just going to insert that to the right of this. So I have account description, debit, credit, and net amount. The next thing I want to do is I want to create a, I want to see the journal entry details. So I'm going to insert a grouping on this report. So I'm going to add a group. It's going to be a parent group to the detail row, and I'm going to group by account number. And as part of that group, I'm going to add a group footer, and I'm going to hit OK. So what that's done now is it's inserted a new row, as you can see here. Now I'm going to, typically when I insert a group, it adds this extra column to the right here. I'm just going to delete that column because I don't really need to see it. I still have the detail row. Then I have a grouping. Now you're going to see this bracket sort of identifies that it is a grouping between my detail row and whatever's in the footer here. So for example, if I now was to drag, not drag, sorry, I'm just going to click net amount here and insert the net. You're going to see it puts sum there because it knows that it's a grouping and it needs to calculate the sum. The other thing I want to add is account number in my summary and account description. Now, one of the things I want to see is the journal entry numbers associated with each one of the transactions. So I'm just going to insert an extra column here to the left. And I'm going to insert journal entry number. As you can see here, now it's put the sum. I don't want that, so I'm just going to delete that particular field. So if I was to run this report right now, what would happen is, and I'm just going to show you, it's going to load and it's going to show, you know, basically the detail all the way down for waste here, and then it's going to show a total at some point. But I'm just going to design this so it's a lot more user-friendly. So what I'm going to do is I want the detail row to expand as I click on another field. So I'm just going to select the detail row, and I'm going to say row visibility, and I'm going to say, I'm going to start off by hiding that row, but it can be toggled on and off by clicking on another row. So I'm going to say account description. Actually, you know what? I'm going to cancel that. I'm just going to check what the account number field is. So up here I have account number 1. That's the properties of that text box. So row visibility, I'm going to hide that, display, and account number 1 is going to toggle that on or off for me. So now if I was to run the report, you're going to see that I have each one of the accounts with a net amount. And then when I click the expansion button, I can then see the specific detail of those transactions. So looking a lot better, still not great though. So some of the things you can do is I can change the formatting. So I want this to be dollar, this to be dollar, this to be dollar, this to be dollar amount. I'm going to make account description a little wider. That bold. So one of the things is right now if I run the report, I see all of the accounts. I'm going to add a parameter to this report that says I want to select a specific account and see the detail. So to add a parameter, what I'm going to do is right click on parameters, button here, say add parameter. I can then create a parameter, so I'm going to call this account number, and the prompt to the end user is going to be account number. And available values is going to be default values. Sorry, before I create the account parameter, I have to add another data set to the report. So I'm going to call this one account numbers, and this is just going to be a listing of account numbers. Just to make things a little bit quicker, I'm just going to use a script I already have here, which is just doing a select distinct account number from GL 105 table. So I'm still using the same data source, but now I'm just inserting my new data set within there, and I'm going to hit OK. So it's created a new data set for us. At this point, I'm just going to create my parameter. So I'm just going to add parameters. We're going to go to give it a name. default values for this parameter. So I want to get the values that are in my data set called account number. So I'm selecting that, and the field I'm going to return is the account number. So now I'm going to hit OK. So now at this point, if I was to run this report, what would happen is I would get a listing of just one account number, which is not great. This is not what we want. So my parameter is there, which is great, but that's not the best. So what I want to do is go back to parameter properties. Actually, available values, I want to switch that to be account number. We'll change this, no default. And I'll click run again. And now you'll see a drop-down box with all my account numbers listed here. I could turn this into a multi-select box where I could select multiple accounts at one time, but for my purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to leave it as selecting one specific account. The next thing I need to do is pass in, I need to pass this parameter back to my data set so that my data set's only returning the set of data for that specific account number. So I need to right-click on data sets. I need to go to dataset properties, and we're going to add a parameter, so a where clause to my report. So I'm going to say where account number equals, and then my parameter, so at account number. Now if I was to click on tab here, if I click on the parameters tab, you're going to see that my parameter within the query is called account number, but I need to pass in my actual parameter. So this could be different names. I'm just like, this could be called ACCT num, for example, or it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to pass in the account number. Now I'm going to hit OK. So now what happens if I run the report? I'm going to get a drop down, and if I select a specific account and click View Report, I'm only going to get data returned back for that one account number. Now I can expand this and see the detail with the journal entry number. So that's a pretty basic report. SRSS is extremely powerful. You can do a lot of, I could add a title on here, page, graphics, whatever. So once again, that's just a small sample of what it can do. So I'm just going to close this for now. I'm not going to save that. And I'm just going to jump over to something called SmartView. So SmartView is a third-party product. It's sold by E1 Solutions. And it's similar to SmartList inside of GP. However, the big advantage is you can do totals and stuff. So it's very powerful, and it returns data a lot quicker too. So I'm just going to open that up to show you what that looks like. So right now this is SmartView external. So there are SmartView internal and external client. Internal works with inside of GP. External is an external application that connects to the database. So you don't actually need GP to run the external application itself. So once again, I'm going to do something similar with financial information. So I'm just going to select, and these are the same smart lists you would see inside of GP. So if I go to account transactions, so I have a listing of here's journal entry, series, transaction date, account number, debit, credit. All looks pretty good at this point. Some of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to add. So I don't want to see work transactions, for example. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to add some extra columns in the report. So I'm going to turn on, so I'm going to look at open year. I want to see that. I also want to see originating document number, originating master. And that's probably the only stuff I'm going to show you. So one of the things I can do is I can drag account description, for example, as a column header. So when I drag that up into this box here, you're going to see that it's now giving me a debit and a credit total per GL account, which is sort of nice. Some of the other things I can do is I can do a find here. So let's say I'm searching for a specific sales transaction inside the system. So one of the things I can do is I can just do, because I already have that column, I'm going to search for SLS 114012. Now it's giving me that specific document with the journal entry that's associated with it, so I can see accounts receivable, say commissions, cost of goods sold, on and on. So I can actually see the detail of that specific transaction. The other thing you can do is you can export to Excel PDF from this report, or from this report. I can add these as favorites. So I think I've exported one here just to show you what that looks like. So here's the same report I just exported to Excel. So most people have something called Excel dashboards that are deployed as part of our GP deployment. So out of the box, there's a lot of reports for the different modules, AP report or Excel reports, GL, on and on. So let me just quickly show you what that looks like. So if you go to your GP share in most cases and go to reports, reports, and I'm just going to go to TWO company. So once again, I have a separate folder for each module. And if I go to financial here, so I have account transactions, I have account detail, I have vendor information under purchasing, I have the vendor master, purchasing master, vendor listing, receivables, dashboard, purchasing dashboard, on and on. So I'm going to start off by using the Excel dashboard as my base to create another report. So I'm going to go into financial once again, and I'm going to go to account transactions default. I'm just going to bring this up and enable content. So out of the box, it's going to pull the information from within GP database at this point, and it's just going to render it in. So I have all the account transactions in the system at this point. But I, at this point, want to create a nice dashboard around this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a pivot table off of this data. So I'm just going to select these columns, and I'm going to go insert pivot table. I'm going to insert this as a new sheet. So I'm just going to hit OK, and then I'm going to drag the debit and credit values. So let's do that. And account number to the rows. And this is account, so I want to see the sum of this. And I also want it to be shown as currency, so I'm just going to do that quickly. Okay, so I have my rows debit sum. Now, one of the nice things about Excel is I can now add slicers and timeline, a number slicer and a timeline slicer. So I'm just going to select my pivot table. I'm going to say insert slicer, and I'm going to add account number as a slicer into this dashboard. So now I have a nice little slicer tool. Now I'm going to do the same thing with creating a timeline slicer. So I'm going to go to insert and timeline. And it's going to look for dates within my data set. So it knows that I have a date called TRX date. So if you don't have a date, this wouldn't work. My data does. So at this point, I have a slicer, so I can select a specific account, and it's going to return that, and I can turn off the filter and see all the accounts once again. I can also change this from months to years. And then I can, drag this around and say I only want to see 2014 or 2015 data. So once again, very powerful. One of the other things I can do is select a specific number. So if I was to double click on this line, for example, it would expand and show me the detail of that line as a separate sheet within my report. And I can just delete that sheet when I'm done looking at it. But that's one of the nice features about pivot tables. So that's a very quick dashboard. Once again, I can move these to other sheets. I can do all sorts of things, merge different data sets within an Excel report. So very, very powerful. Let me close this. So I've shown you some of the normal inside of GP tools. I'm just going to jump to Power BI now, which is which is a fairly new tool that's, there's been a lot of development around in the last year, I would say. There's been quite a bit of changes too in the last couple months with the product. Power BI Desktop itself is a free product. So more of a self-service type tool. There's something called Power BI Service, which is Microsoft's cloud offering for Power BI. So what you can do is take a data model that you've developed in the desktop and actually publish that up to a shared site that other people can use or access. One of the things I would say about the Power BI service is they used to have it where you could actually share dashboards in the free model. However, now you basically are pretty much forced to go to the pro version if you want to share dashboards with other users. And the cost of that is, I think it's $12.99 Canadian per month per user. So just to be aware of that, that there is a cost to move to the pro version or to share dashboards in reality. So I'm just going to bring up Power BI Desktop. So everything I'm showing you at this point is all free. So I'm just going to say I want to get data at this point. I'm just going to cancel this actually. Click Get Data. So the first thing you want to do is get data from your SQL server. So I'm just going to go to SQL. It's my data source. And there's a lot of data sources. I pull data from all sorts of web services out there, different applications that live on the web, different SQL databases. Let me just bring up that list again. It's a very extensive list of folders, text files, Excel, IMDb, 2 databases, MySQL databases. Like I say, the list is large and growing every month. So I'm going to get data from SQL at this point. And we're going to go to MySQL servers, build PPG demo serve. Databases, TWO. I'm just going to hit OK. So at this point, it's going to return all the objects that are part of this database. I only want to see, this is going to be a little bit different than the previous reports we built. I'm going to look at actually sales transaction or sales line item detailed information. So if I just start typing sales, line. So here's a view called sales line items. So I'm just going to select that. That's really what I want to see. And I'm going to load this. So at this point, I'm going to select Edit Queries. So I have my data that's in the sales line table. So for those who are not familiar with sales line detail, so I have SOP number, SOP type, quantity, extended cost, extended price, item description. Those are pretty much the columns I'm going to work with. So the first thing I want to do is I have a lot of columns here that I don't need. So I'm going to select Choose Columns, and I'm going to unselect all the columns, and I'm going to select the columns I need. So I'm just going to be SOP type, SOP number, item description, quantity, extended cost, extended price. I'm going to do customer class. I want to see. And item class code I also want to see. And date field, document date, I'd like to see as well. So I'm just going to hit OK at this point. Now it's only returned those specific columns to me. So as you can see, it's keeping a record of the steps. So first thing I did is connect to the source. I removed some columns, so I could actually go in here at a later point in time and say, I would like to really add this specific column. I can just click on this gear, open this up, and it's going to bring me back to this where I can add another specific row if I want to. So now that I have my data, one of the things you'll notice is in my data I have document types of fulfillment orders, invoices, all sorts of document types. I only want to see invoices and returns. So I'm just going to apply that filter just to see those specific document types. Now, one of the things with returns is that in the table it stores returns as a positive number, just with a different sales order type. So I have a way of multiplying the quantity by -1 and basically all the columns by -1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this particular query here. So I'm going to create a duplicate of this. And I'm going to go back to, I'm just going to filter out and say I only want to see returns in that second query itself. So these are the returns I have in the system. I'm going to multiply this by -1, so I'm just going to go transform and multiply this particular column by -1. And I'll do the same thing with extended cost. And same thing with extended price. That. So now what I'm going to do is in my first data set I have returns, and I still have returns and invoices. So I actually want to remove the invoices and just have invoices, or remove returns and just have invoices. And then what I'm going to do is append the second data set back with the first data set. So I'm just going to select the first data set. I'm going to go back to home and I'm going to say append query. And it's going to ask me what two tables do I want to append, and I want to append the table I'm on with sales line items 2, and hit OK. So now in my sales line items I have, you'll see invoices, and if I was to select just returns, you'll notice that my returns and extended cost are all negative numbers now, which is exactly what I want. So I'm just going to apply this so I actually see both. So at this point I've basically created my data model, and this is probably where you would spend most of your time, just cleaning up stuff. Actually, you know what, I want to do a couple other things. I'd like to move the doc date. I'm just going to move this to after SOP number. And the one thing, to work with dates, I really need to take this data and do some manipulation with the dates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a column, and I'm going to highlight this doc date column and take date, and I want to see the date only instead of date time. So I'm just going to say date only, which is added just a date column. I'm going to do the same thing with this specific column, and I'm going to say I want to see the year of that column. So I'm going to add year. Just added a year column, and I'll do the same thing with I want to see the month name. So I'm going to go month, and I'm going to say name a month, so I can see that as well. So as you can see, it's added all of those columns. The one thing I would say is that dealing with years and objects on this report, I don't want this to be a number. I actually want this to be a text field, so I can just click up here into year and change this to text. And this is already text, and this is a date, which is perfect. So at this point, I have my data model created. And I'm just going to say, go back to home, I'm going to say close and apply. So what it's doing is it's creating the data model at this point for me. Just give this a second to render, training the data. So because I don't really need this, I'm just going to hide this in the report view so I don't need to see. So this is my data set. As you can see, this is my data. I'm just going to go back to the actual desktop where I'm building the report. So something I can do very simply is I can start creating objects, bar charts, pie charts, matrix tables of the data on my report. So I'm going to start creating some reports, and it's very simple to do. So I can go do something like, I like to see total sales by item class bar chart as an example. So extended price is going to be my main field I want to see. So here's my total extended price amounts, but I want to see it by item class. So here's the item class code. I can just drag this onto here, and I now see here's item classes. So I have retail, memory, -1, on and on. This is showing information for all years though, but I'm going to show you in a bit how I can restrict this and see only specific years and such. So I'm going to create another bar chart, create total sales. I'm going to create the total sales by customer class now. So, and I'm going to do a pie chart of that. So once again, I'm just dragging the extended price onto the report, and I'm going to do customer class. So once again, it's defaulted as this type of object, but I have all of these objects available to me. So I'm just going to do a pie chart of that as long as it's selected. There it goes, nice little pie chart by customer class. One of the other things I want to see is I want to do a card of the total sales. So I'm just going to drag extended price, and I'm going to switch that to be a card. So it's giving me a total amount here now as well, which is sort of nice. I'm just going to. The other thing I would say is that right now, as you can see, the the titles of each one of these is sort of ugly. If I click on this little paintbrush format, I can go into this and do things like turn off category labels. So I just have a number. I can click on this and do things like title, give it a title. So total sales by item class. I can center it, make it as big as I want. Change the color of that title, so make it black. You can put borders, backgrounds. It's pretty powerful, the stuff you can do. So you turn on borders, for example, do things of that sort. So I talked a little bit about, so I'm going to add, I have year on this report, so I'm going to add year as a number, and I'm going to change this to a slicer. So what that does is it allows me to then select a specific box and have the data change based on that year. So I could say like 2017, I had 1.49 million of sales. 2018. Now you might be asking, well, what if I want to see multiples here? Well, I can just go into the format and go to selection controls and turn off select all. So now I have a select all button there as well. So I can say select all or specific year once again. The other thing I'm going to show is how to turn on, I'm going to add a month slicer as well, so I'm going to drag month name in here. Oops. I'm going to change that into a slicer. Once again, I'm going to switch this to be, I'm going to have a select all. Now, that's the basics of the report. I'm just going to close this down without saving this. I have another report that I've actually built. I'm just going to wait for that to launch. So same report, I've just added some titles and made it a little prettier, but really the same information. So I can, once again, the other things I can do is click on a specific object. So let's say I want to see 2017 sales. However, I want to see retail. So I can actually click on that object. And as you can see, the charts are actually changing based on me clicking different parts of the object. So I can see that, I can also hover over certain sections and see that in 2017, retail, the highlighted is 566,000. So of retail, that's how many retail sales I actually had in 2017. So once again, very, very extremely powerful product. So you'll notice up here there's this publish button, and this is sort of what I talked about as far as I could publish this report up to Power BI service. So the service, let me just bring that up to show you what that looks like. So here's the same report I've just published up to the service. I have a pro license, a pro trial license at this point. But once again, it's very interactive, so I can do things like I can, click on specific objects. When I clicked on the object, you notice that was a dashboard. Now this brought up the actual report, so I can do things like 2016, 2017, and continue to see data and drill into data as I see fit to analyze it. So at this point, what I'm going to do is there's also a mobile client, which I'm not going to show on the screen right now. But so what I can do is actually, when I publish the report, there's an application from Microsoft that allows me to bring up these reports on a mobile device. Once again, having a pro license is probably the best way to go, especially when you want to share dashboards between users. I can then annotate the dashboards and the reports on my mobile device, share them out, send them, draw on them, whatever I would really want to do. So at this point, I'm just going to open it up to some questions. I'm probably going to turn off people's mics so I can hear everyone. Just give me a second to do that. Does anyone have any questions other than, I see there's a couple questions in the chat box here, so I'm going to answer those just before we get going. Is the open year, fiscal year, or calendar year? Open year in that particular case would have been fiscal year. In my particular case, the other question was, can I create a calculation from 2 cards on the desktop GP percentage? Do you want to explain that one, Tom? Not sure if Tom's still with us. Does anyone else have any questions? I'm not sure if we're having technical difficulties. Can everyone hear me? I've unmuted people, but I'm not sure if that's actually taking effect here, so let me try. I think Tom can hear me. He just sent me a message here. So does anyone else have any questions? Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining me this morning. Hopefully you got some decent information out of that. If you have any questions, you can send me an email, paulj@profit.ca, and I will answer any questions you have related to anything you've seen today. Thank you very much and have a great day.